Come on, come here, come a little closer. Don't be afraid, no.
Today's guest is a woman whose accomplishments speak loudly and whose presence speaks even deeper. Melissa Suchadolski is the president of USC Builds, a Rochester-based woman and minority-owned construction firm and a respected leader in an industry that rarely makes space easily. She's made history as the first woman and the first person of color to chair the Builders Exchange of Rochester, and her work continues to shape workforce development and opportunity across our region. But beyond the titles, Melissa is a radical trailblazer, a master builder of both structures and people. She leads with a fierce heart and a grounded strategy, turning lived experiences into purpose and scars into strength. Her leadership is bold, human, and deeply intentional, the kind that creates real impact and lasting opportunity. Melissa does not just break barriers, she builds what comes next. Melissa, I am so happy to have you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. As I was getting ready this morning, I was thinking about how our paths converged. And I remember seeing you at the City of Rochester MWBE conference.
Yeah.
And I had been doing work in supplier diversity across the country and having a lot of conversations. And I asked a tough question, and I don't know if you even remember this, but I asked a tough question because I had been going across the country and talking to people in supplier diversity. And what I kept hearing was, well, we want to get these corporate contracts. How do we get these corporate contracts? And I kept saying, there's so much opportunity for us to support one another. And the question that I asked you was, what are you guys up there doing to support other MWBE businesses? And the truth was everybody else choked on that question. And I watched them choke, and I watched you rise to fill that space. And your answer was so profound. And it was so evident to me that you were walking your talk. And I approached you afterwards. I was like, I just think you're amazing. And some years went by. And actually, Scott, who owns the studio, brought us back together in the middle of next year. And I was just like, when you're supposed to come together, you're supposed to come together, because you just changed my world. And I'm so grateful for the impact that you're creating in our community.
Well, thank you for those words. You honor me with them. Thank you. And
you're welcome.
I think just my takeaway from that is my desire is to just show up authentically. So if you felt that and you saw that, my ease in response is just because I'm just speaking my truth. And so it's really easy when you're not, making a false pretense, or you're not trying to put something out there that you're not living every day. So I think a lot of times I look to people who may be dishonest or maybe put false fronts, and I just think that's a lot of energy and effort expended in the wrong direction. I rather just direct all of my energy to my positive intention and make sure that that's the case. I'm so blessed that our paths have crossed again, and it is evident to me we are meant to work together.
Yes.
And the experience that I had with you, doing my personal brand development was transformative. And, it's even funny at this time in my life, I just turned 50 last year.
Yeah.
And my business turned 25, turns 25 next month. Despite all of that, the fact that we get to reinvent ourselves through various phases of life. And I'm just so blessed that at this phase of my journey that we were able to connect, and you were able to, share your truth and how you see me, and also help me kind of explore that. And it's been very, very profoundly impactful. So thank you.
You are so welcome. You're so welcome. In our experience, I really resonated, with your story. And although all stories are a little bit different, something that really stood out to me was this way that you have alchemized your own challenges. And, one of the things that really comes up, I think, for a lot of women in leadership is, maybe early in life, we were taught some certain behaviors that maybe it's a survival mechanism or a defense mechanism. And then at some point we get to this point in our journey where we go, oh, wait,
Yeah.
this doesn't go here. What is this? And I wondered, with your experience, if you might be able to share, some experiences that you've had where the ways that you approached things in the past didn't really fit where you are right now.
Thanks for that. That's a profound question. So I am very, very open about my past experiences because I feel as though when we own those, even if they're past traumas, that we give other people the freedom to do the same. So I am a childhood sexual abuse survivor. And ironically, that trauma has very much become my superpower because I did lean all the way into it. It took me quite some time into early adulthood to come to terms with what happened. I think because my initial survival required me to stifle that and to suppress that. And I don't think yet I was able to process that fully. And I think it took a certain degree of mental ability to process, but also to know that I had survived some other things that were less traumatic, so that I had a basis of understanding if I did delve into that and process that fully, that I was going to be okay. And I think that when you've gone through trauma and you have had some experiences that you have survived, you start to gauge, your inner wisdom, your inner intuition, gives you the guidance on when the timing is right for processing that. And so it did come forward in my 20s. And how I think it presented early in my adult years was hypervigilance. And also, I was very much armored. It showed up as hyper independence. I couldn't depend on others. I could depend on myself. I'm a huge overachiever. I am also, you will never outwork me. And at once, earlier in my career, I thought that those were really wonderful qualities. And yes, they have served me extremely well. But to your statements, there comes a time in your journey where they stop serving you. And when I needed to build a team, and when I needed to demonstrate leadership through a vulnerable lens, it was quite difficult for me. And so I have also been a lifelong, therapy goer. I participate in therapy. I'm always doing coaching. I have probably 6 self-help books in progress as we speak. I just can't consume content fast enough. And I have such a hunger to better understand myself and better understand the human condition that I'm a lifelong learner and a lifelong, student. And so I'm just in full exploration mode right now. Yeah. And I know very well God is preparing me for a massive level up opportunity. And so much so it sometimes takes my breath away. But I feel as though everything I'm doing right now is in full preparation for that. And it couldn't be opposite from where I started my career, which was to be that overachiever and to be so identified with what I'm doing. Yeah. Now it is all about developing my essence. It is about living in my being and not my doing, and pausing and being still and being in touch with my inner knowing. I am a faith-filled person. So for me, it is a God connection. And tapping into that divinity within me is a critical part of my current journey.
I love that so much. I'm talking to so many women right now who are having this experience of, I feel like my spirituality, my faith, my understanding of the energy world, whatever language that you want to use to describe it. There's so many women that are feeling this calling. And it has really, obviously, it has very much inspired my work. Yeah. And seeing how many women like you are leading from this place. And for you, did that just kind of come on? Was it like an organic thing? Was it a conscious thing? What was that moment? Or was there a moment where were you always this way, where you were like, okay, I need to do some things different? And, was it a disconnection that you felt? Or what was that experience when you started to kind of bring this in?
When I reflect on early life and some of the, my trauma happened between the time of 3 and 11. In hindsight now, looking back at those years, I felt very much that I was being protected. Despite what I was going through, I felt very much as though I was going to be okay and I was being protected. And I know that sounds strange given what my experience was. But that sense of calm, that sense of peace during a traumatic experience, it was very clear to me that was the voice of God, that was the love of God, that was the grace of God. And I feel as though as I carried that forward in my adult years, I started to also sense a disturbance, if you will, feeling as though I couldn't find that stillness, feeling as though I was separate from that. And I felt as though, my ideal state is to be in the middle. And I felt like I was on a roller coaster, depending on what was happening externally in my life. And so I think the knowing and the awakening happened around that riding that roller coaster is not sustainable for me. I was going to burn out. I was going to, I was feeling very anxious. I had a lot of worry. And to me, that was a sense like I need to be still. I need to find that peace. I need to reconnect with that. And I think that's when my internal exploration happened. Yes, I've always had counseling. I've always done coaching. Those very much felt like external solutions. And I felt very distinctly at that time that there was an inner knowing that I needed to connect with. And it was through that and creating space for that, which for me is mornings. Like I have to start my day grounded in that. And so it's an hour of really intentional quiet time and just really connecting with my spirit and being able to, tap into that throughout my day as the roller coaster is always there. It's never going away. And, part of my growth right now is recognizing that peace is not the absence of chaos. Peace happens in the midst of the chaos. And so it's leaning into that and changing the expectations that I can control everything in the universe when really I just need to alter how I approach that or how I perceive that or how I interact with that chaos. And I have that choice. And I think prior to that, I felt I was being pulled into some darkness and pulled into reactivity that was darkness. And so the knowing was affirmed once I got still and quiet because I did not feel triggered. I did not feel reactive. And I felt as though I had more power and I was empowered to do what was best for me.
Do you feel like the stillness really helped with those things you mentioned, like the hypervigilance and the hyperachiever? That stillness really helped you get that peace with those things.
It did. And I felt as though it's not all on my shoulders, right? I think the dysfunction in the hypervigilance and the hyperachieving is that your ego makes you feel as though everything is your responsibility. And that is a very heavy burden. That is a very lonely journey. And it also separates, not only does it separate us from spirit, it separates us from others and creates barriers in relationship. And so for me, it was building the muscle and the skill to be more vulnerable so that I could lay down that burden and not feel as though everything has to be in my control. And that is a daily practice. So, it's a newer practice, but I feel as though it's a human condition that it's a daily practice because things are going to keep coming at you, right? You're still going to be tested. You're still going to have, different challenges that arise. So it's truly, I think now when those things happen, it's the pause and the recognition is what is my responsibility in this?
Yeah.
And what is my part in this? And what part do I want to play in this? Because not everything is meant for me to pick up. Whereas everything that used to come into my sphere is like, oh, that's mine. I got this. I got this. I got this. I got this. It's like whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's whack-a-mole. You can't hit all the heads. So just being honest about that and just taking the pause and interrogating and questioning and then following the knowing that comes through the questioning. But it didn't come by being more busy. And that's very difficult to shift for someone who's the hyperachiever, hypervigilant. You're like, what do you mean I gotta sit still? What do you mean? That's not a thing we do. But I went to one of my counselors he was a spiritual based counselor. He had me sit in a room for the first 30 minutes of my counseling session every week, is sitting in silence for 30 minutes. And I got to tell you, the first time I did that, though, it felt like spiritual warfare. I could not be still. I felt tormented by stillness. And it took a good year of that practice, but sitting with someone who was so spiritually profoundly grounded, who was my guide, if you will, and who was holding space with me and creating safety for me in that space was essential for me. And so my journey is very unique, and not many people would pay for 30 minutes to sit in silence. Best money I've ever spent.
I'm going to need a discount.
Best money I've ever spent. And you know, it was a lot of work. I know it sounds strange to sit and to be still as being a lot of work, but when you have, you know, it's muscle memory and patterns of behavior that are, you know, baked over time, your whole lifetime.
It's almost compulsion, right? Like I can relate with the hypervigilant hyperachiever. I have taken positive intelligence, and those are my biggest two saboteurs right there. So as you're talking, I'm like, oh, I get it. Yeah. But you're right that, and this has been a lesson for me this year as well. Last July, actually, my coach said, I want you to take 7 days off. And I was like, what? You know, like 7 in a row?
Yeah.
And it was so challenging for me. And I get that torment you're talking about because your mind is kind of racing a million miles an hour. And when you can't do anything with it, right? And you have to just be, like you were talking about. It is such a flip of the switch. What was so fascinating about that experience that I took from that, and now I'm integrating in my life, is at the end of that week was when the clarity had come through for what I was supposed to do with my work. And I had really been struggling, and I had been telling everybody around me, I kept saying, you know, God, source, universe, spirit, whatever word you'd like to use, it wants me to do something, and there's a sense of urgency, and I know it's around women. I don't know what it is. Like, I keep asking, but I kept doing.
Yeah.
And I didn't get still. And it wasn't till Coach Jill said, sit your ass down for 7 days and do not move and float in. She said, float in your pool, sit in the sun, do whatever, but no work. And it came through. And now that I've been practicing that, we're like, okay, how can I build this into my life now? Because we probably have that in common where you have to schedule time off.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
But now it's like I'm building that into my life.
Yes.
And what's coming through, I'm so much more productive now. I was just saying this to my son last night. I said, I realized I'm more productive now when I'm taking time to rest than I was when I wasn't. And what a wild realization that is.
It's impact magnified, right?
Oh, yes.
Impact is magnified and it's concentrated. So you don't have to expend a lot of energy because you have such awareness and clarity on where your energy is best spent. So it actually takes a lot less of you. And we fool ourselves by thinking if we're busy, we're productive. And those two things are not the same thing. For me, in my past journey, it was I couldn't feel. Feeling was painful. So I'm going to busy myself so I can separate from feeling anything. And then what started off as survival then just becomes habit.
Yeah.
And even though my circumstances changed and my life circumstances, the habits stuck.
Yeah.
And then the habits beget other habits. You know, I'm separated from feeling, so my relationships are now challenged because I'm not fully present. I'm not fully, connected. And, it's just this cascading effect. So being still is the way we peel away, in my experience, is peeling back all the noise and just getting really clear.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's... we're so overstimulated today, right?
Oh my gosh.
It's everywhere. It's all the time. It's these phones. I mean, they're wonderful in some ways and like horrible in other ways. And this concept of being rather than doing and productivity, right? Versus like busyness.
Yeah.
I think there's so many women right now. And even if you think about the way we're conditioned, right. So something I was really thinking about in terms of why is it so hard for my women leaders to ask for help? Why do they feel like they have to do everything? Because when I work with my male clients, that's not an issue. It just doesn't come up. But there's this huge difference with my female entrepreneurs where there's this, I have to do everything I say. They want to slap an S on their chest, conquer the world, right? But you're only one person. But my male clients, that doesn't even cross their mind. Like they're like, okay, we need that, hire this person. We need that, not hire that person, right? And I got thinking, what is the reason? We think about the ways that we're socialized, right? And especially if you grew up in any type of dysfunction or trauma, we're supposed to take care of everybody else as women, right? And everybody else's needs are supposed to come first. And in some ways, our value is kind of ascribed by the way we care for others and not as much ourselves. So there's this unlearning, I feel like, that almost needs to come through. And I find myself in it some days, you know?
Unlearning is a great phrase for it. Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, last week was super busy for me. I launched a program with the city. It was amazing. I had a huge event on Friday that was beautiful. I had Athena on Thursday, right? So it was like, and I couldn't, I like to make homemade dinner and I couldn't make dinner. And there was this moment of like, oh my gosh, what are they going to do? By the way, my kids are 15 and 18. I don't have littles.
No, but it's your ritual. It's your important family connection time.
For sure. And like, where's the grace for me, right? Where it's like, okay, mom's got a really busy week this week. And they were fine with it. But I noticed just the pressure I was putting on myself in something that really was not a big deal. So I feel like there's so many women that are challenged with this. And I know you work with a lot of amazing leaders. Do you see these types of things within your own team or the women you're working with?
So you mentioned the Athena Awards. One thing before we move on to that other subject is all the people that came up to speak, all the honorees. Yeah. Did you notice the thread there? It was almost funny. They all came forward, and then their 1-minute remarks, they all focused on, hey, I don't need to have all the answers.
Right.
I can admit I need help, and I don't have to do it all.
Yeah.
Those were the 3 common themes with every single person that came up, and it became like almost comedy.
Almost comical, yeah.
Yeah, it was comical at the end because they're like, well, what she said, So I feel as though, yes, that is a thing that we're all striving for. And I almost felt like in incorporating it in their remarks, it's that we're reprogramming ourselves and we're unlearning all the things that we've always learned, right? And because we have to do everything for others, we're so often judged by our performance, not by our identity, not by, we talk about men, you talk about, well, he's a good guy. And, he plays golf, or, it's like the whole person assessment of a man. And I think we as women, oftentimes we're relegated to what we do professionally. Yeah. And if we have children.
Yeah.
Right. And not everyone has children.
Right.
So in those instances, we're hyperfixated on what they do. Because if you don't have kids, like you must be like,
what are you doing?
Right. What are you doing with all that time? Right. Like we judge so many people in this way. Right. And so I feel like I love those remarks because it was also, as everyone said them, I felt as though they were also holding themselves accountable to unlearning.
Yeah.
And that was really profound. And so I do try to model that for my own team. I do try to lead through vulnerability of this isn't my responsibility, and often, the humility that comes with that. My ego loves the disappointment. Not really, but it's when I exit myself from the equation, I think my old pattern of behavior was I needed to be a part of something in order for it to succeed. Number one, that undermined my team. And it also created dependencies that were not in alignment with the vision that I had for the business. Yeah. And yet I was creating that myself, right? Yeah. And so those dependencies were real, and I was undermining independence. I was undermining their own development, their own professional and personal development. And so I forget how I became aware of that. But once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? And so there would be literally times I'd be in meetings and those old behaviors would crop up and I would say, you know what? I don't think this process needs me. I'm going to leave now. And anybody need anything before I go? And they're like, no. And guess what? The process works way better the minute I exit stage right. So my ego's disappointed, but I love that I'm, canceling a cycle of dependency that is been really detrimental to achieving what we are trying to achieve as a team.
Yeah.
So it's a hard awareness, but it's an important one. And I think it's a practice. It's a daily practice because we do have lifetimes of habits and behaviors that we're, even if you unlearn and have the consciousness that you need to unlearn, executing on that and acting on that is a daily commitment.
Yes. Like in the moment, because we have a lot, you and I have a lot in common. I've read all your assessments and I'm like, yes, we're totally spirit sisters. Had a very similar experience myself, you know, and just like almost like I'm a hoverer. I realize like I hover, you know, and that feeling of like I have to do everything myself. And when I found the teammate, and this was a big aha for me, that really gave me the space. You know, because that what you talked about in terms of I was almost grooming the behavior, you know, and I didn't realize it. Same. Yeah. Right. So part of that was like unconsciously building a team that was a little more dependent on me.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't intentional. It was the last thing in the world that wasn't intentional, but subconsciously I was doing that. And when it got to this point of, like you said, you're in a new place in your journey, and I'm like, I can't stretch that far. Like I am not Laffy Taffy. And I can't touch all of these things, and I have to make a decision to do something different. But what is that? There's almost like a paralyzing fear of if I'm not there, what might happen?
Yeah, it might be better. It might actually be better.
I'll tell you, my goodness. Agree, right? So I realized for me that was also a belief that was rooted in childhood trauma, right? If I'm not there, things might go seriously wrong, and I can mitigate things going seriously wrong if I'm there. And when I found the right people, and this is why alignment is so critical. And I saw that beautiful alignment between you and Joe, like really quick, right? And I was like, oh, I see how you play together. Like, and there's a healing.
And complement one another.
Absolutely.
Right? We're not the same human being.
No.
And very seldom do we find the space and comfort and trust in someone who is like us. It's someone who supports us in the ways that we need, but don't necessarily see.
Yes.
Sometimes that comes through accountability. Sometimes that comes through holding space. Sometimes that comes through sharing truths that we can't see and we don't want to see. But to your point, it's the just-in-time support.
Yeah.
And I feel as though in that process of letting go, it's the recognition. It's better than I could have imagined. And it is also the recognition that that's really what I needed and what I wanted. And now that I've had a taste of that, I don't want the old way. Right? Because once you have a taste for the other side of that coin and you recognize how healing that is, not just for yourself, but for others, you know, part of the need to control is to create safety that I did not feel. And so I'm fixated now in building team and creating that safety among my team and getting to a heightened state of vulnerability as a team and sharing deep parts of ourselves that we may not share with others and creating space for that. Because if we have that as a team, we're unstoppable.
Yeah.
Right? So
it's absolutely beautiful to witness, and it's healing, right? And I think when I was looking at you and Joe together, I was like, your beingness is just healing for one another, you know? And now that I too have been able to have that experience, the way it makes me better in every way, because I don't feel like Laffy Taffy anymore. I don't feel like I'm stretched so thin that I might snap at any moment, you know? My mind isn't busy doing things that might not necessarily be the best use of its time, right? Like I wasn't being maximized, and I realized that too. Oh my goodness, I have so many better ideas, and I'm building better partnerships, and we're getting better opportunities because I'm not fixated on finance anymore. Thank you, Jill. Thank you for taking that over. You know, it just took me so long, and it's just not my expertise. So it's like when I could start handing those things over to people I really trusted, it allowed me to show up so much better. So it's so freeing, and I'm so looking forward to women kind of like unshackling themselves from this burden of doing it all themselves.
But there is a truth too, and a wisdom too, in being a generalist in your own business, so that you have the understanding of what is necessary, so that when you're inspecting others that are doing
Yes.
it, you know what inspection looks like.
Yes.
Right. And there's a certain degree of judgment and wisdom that applies there. But I think it also comes with the wisdom of where are your greatest strengths, and that is the priority of your concentration of your energy should be in your greatest strengths. So yes, I'm a generalist. I can do everything, which means I know to ask really great questions of my finance team, because finance is not my superpower. But I know enough to play one on TV, right? Like it's, and that protects me also. So I just don't want to go too far to the other extreme in the sense that you completely relinquish to others in a way that may be unsafe or in a way that might be reckless. So there's a middle there, right? And the importance in, I don't want to spend all of my time there, but I do need to spend a little bit of time there, because there are some challenging things that can occur if you completely give responsibility to others.
It's so true.
I just wanted to mention that as balance, because I feel like, if I had a choice, I'd never touch finance again. Right. But that is a very risky, very dangerous
Don't
thing.
do that. Don't do that.
Oprah Winfrey says she signs every check. She's the only one that signs every check. I've always taken that wisdom to heart, and made sure that, and it's not even that people have ill intent or ill will. It could just be negligence. It could just be ignorance. It could be a lot of things that can go sideways quickly. So.
Yeah. And if nothing else, because I know this was the angle I took in my business as well, is early on, I got certified in everything, because I was like, as I build a team, I want to know how to be managing them properly. Right. And now a lot of times I'll have clients that come up to me and they're like, well, do you do this? And do you do that? And like, I don't necessarily do it. I have a team that does it. But the difference between me managing them and you managing them is that I know what to look for. You have no idea. Love you so much, right? But like, if he puts the metrics in front of you, you're not going to even know what you're looking at, where I will. And that's the protection that you get. So agree. And then I think the other thing is, at the very least, I don't know if you're like this, but as a hyperachiever and a hypervigilant, it quells my anxiety. Yeah. Right. That urge to like know everything. It's like, okay, I know enough that I feel confident, but I don't need to get into the weeds on every little thing. What I do need is some wonderful teammates that I can trust. Yeah. Right. That really support me, that really get it, that they have integrity. Yeah. And keep my finger on the pulse. And like you said, just really focus on my superpower.
And I think in every business, there's opportunities to create dashboard metrics. Like, what are the things that you can inspect that give you a really good litmus test on the overall like viability of the business or the success of the business? And so that's where we're fixated on as a team right now, is what is the dashboard metrics that at this stage, because we've had tremendous growth over the last 2 years, and the data from 2 years ago, it's not the same. I'm not looking at the same data, right? I'm not even looking at the same data points, because we have different vulnerabilities than we had 2 years ago. And we have different, priorities than we had 2 years ago. So it's doing that assessment periodically. Is like, what's my dashboard? And it could be a literal dashboard. It could be a technological dashboard if you have software, or it could literally just be, these are the reports I'm looking at, and you decide the cadence of, I'm looking at them weekly, I'm looking at them monthly or quarterly. But I think that's been really helpful for me to not be feeling like I'm Laffy Taffy pulled in all the directions. It's like, I can't do finance every day, but there's a report I can run at a certain interval that quells that anxiety in me, makes me feel safe, makes me feel that we're on the right path, but also allows me to scrutinize and inspect others so that they know that I am paying attention. Because that's equally important, accountability for others.
Totally agree. Totally. And for you, your industry is obviously very male dominated. You're in the construction field. And I guess another question I have for you is, as you've navigated that as a woman leader, like, what would you say have been the biggest takeaways from you? Because I totally get the male dominated space. It's a different world for sure. And you have navigated it so powerfully. What were some of the things that you learned along the way that really helped you do it so fabulously, girl? You killed it.
Well,
you still are. You still are.
I appreciate that. I love that the perception externally is that I'm killing it, because it's been very turbulent, I will tell you. So, earlier in my career, we talked about, the hypervigilance, overachiever. And for me, that was very much translated to a 24/7 practice. And I leaned heavily into the areas that I felt most vulnerable, because that's what I do. I mitigate risk, right? And that's a learned practice from when I was 3 years old. What is the scariest thing in this room that's meant to hurt me? And how do I learn the most about that so I don't get hurt?
Yeah.
And that's translated every day of my life thereafter. So for me, the greatest vulnerability in a construction business was around estimating. And so I learned how to be an estimator. And so I gained those technical skills so that I knew, even if I wasn't doing estimating every day, that I knew how to scrutinize an estimate properly. And I knew how to manage my team to make sure that we were going to be profitable and that there was an inherent risk there. And I'm really good at estimating. I'm really good at contract review. And so risk mitigation has been my superpower, but that was born from my trauma. So the other thing that showed up in construction is I felt as though I needed to almost become more male-like in my demeanor, speak louder so that I could be heard, be more rigid in a situation and in negotiation so that people don't take advantage of me. And this was a false perception. Like, this was definitely a bias I carried from past experience that I carried with me that, misinterpreted the environment that I was operating in. Yeah. And I felt as though if I didn't show up this way with this heavy male energy, that I would be taken advantage of. And it was I wasn't operating in my authenticity, and I was miserable. And I felt like the more I showed up male-like, I became more unhappy. And I'm so grateful for a very dear friend, Sherry, who came to work with me. And we had known each other socially outside of work. And then she came to work with me. And she observed for a long time. She observed probably for about 6 months. And she pulled me aside and had the grace and the care to just tell me, you are not showing up as your authentic self. And she challenged me on, why is it that you feel you can't be yourself? And through that exploration with her and my own soul searching, I realized that I was not really being me. And so we called it the Softer Side of Melissa campaign. If you remember, I'm showing my age now, folks,
love it.
The Softer Side of Sears became the Softer Side of Melissa campaign. And I just went on a frank discussion tour and met with clients, and I had to repair some relationships because I was showing up in ways that were really abrasive and really combative. And I was showing up in a very litigious way, and I was negotiating like really harshly. And I always assumed the worst of people, and it was like this self-fulfilling prophecy. And so I think, very, very poignantly, like, being authentically me, which is very feminine energy, has actually been really profoundly impactful in a positive way in my business. And so when I made that shift, I think that is when things really clicked. And that is when the true successes became more real. And so I just encourage anyone, whether you're in a male-dominated industry or you're feeling as though you're a small person in a very big ocean, it's just show up authentically as yourself every day, unapologetically, and have the courage to be fully yourself, because that is when you will really find your place and where you will really thrive.
Oh, that was so beautiful. You hit on some amazing points. And the one I really want to go back to is feeling like we need to show up in a masculine way. And I too have had that experience, and many of the things that you just said absolutely did. And I see this, and it was interesting because I was at the Athena Social prior to the awards, and I was chatting with a few ladies from the generation prior to mine, and we were having this conversation, and it's interesting because for them, it's still present. Yeah. It's still present because that was the image of leadership that they got. And when we started talking about how does that affect your mood? How does it affect your inspiration, your creativity, right? It was just like, it burns me out. It's exhausting. And it's like, when that alignment is not there because we're not showing up authentically, whether it's because we think we need to show up more masculine, or we think we need to show up like we're more educated, or like, we came from a certain neighborhood, or whatever the case may be. Or you
stifle your creativity, or you it's basically inauthenticity, right? Like showing up differently than you do and who you are in everyday part of your life.
It throws everything off, right? And that was a big lesson for me was, well, when I'm aligned and I'm authentic, I attract other people that authentically believe the same things I believe and value, the same things that I value. Where that self-fulfilling prophecy of when you're not showing up authentic and aligned, now you're attracting other people that are not showing up authentic and aligned, right?
Exactly. So true. It's so true.
Oh, it's the most freeing thing in the world. It's like, it feels, I know for me, and I don't know if this was the case for you, like when I made that decision, you know, and it was conscious for me. I used to have a name for her. She was my representative. My representative showed up to things. Oh, that's my representative sending her over there. And when I decided to just cut that loose, two things happened. I attracted the most beautiful human beings into my life that were so aligned in every way that it was almost magical.
Yes.
And I started to repel the people who I did not want in my circle anyway.
Yes.
It's like
say it again for the people in the back, Stephanie. Oh my goodness.
You don't want everybody in your world,
No.
you know? So set those lines, make those boundaries clear, talk about the hills that you're going to die on, because everybody who's not aligned with that is going to fall away, and it's going to be so clear who you should be aligned with.
Yeah. So last year, one of the most challenging lessons learned, I fired my largest client. I literally walked away from a third of my annual revenue in backlog in faith that when I purged this toxicity of this relationship from my life, that there is an abundant solution that is going to spring forward and I will be better aligned. And it feels sometimes operating in that space like it's a privilege. It's not a privilege. It's a necessity. It is survival. Because when you are operating in space and in partnership with others who are not sharing your values, you are piece by piece, part of you dies.
It's so true.
It just dies. And if that is the fate that you want to resolve yourself with, that is a fate worse than death, because you are operating not in alignment. You are not operating from purpose. You are not in your values. You are not in your mission. And you are telling the world that I am for sale.
Ooh.
And it's just not worth it. There's no amount of money that is worth being in a bad, toxic business dynamic or personal dynamic.
Right.
It's just not enough.
Girl, I was going to ask you for one piece of advice before we wrapped up, but I think you just hit it right there.
It's just not worth it, right? And I often say, give yourself permission to say goodbye to people, places, and things that no longer serve you.
Yes.
And face the hard truths of that. And it's not that you have to mean other people ill will.
Right.
We release them. We bless them.
That's right.
We wish the best for them. But we do not have to shackle ourselves to them.
No.
When you have the constant reality and awareness that that is not serving you, you have to honor that in order to honor yourself. And so was it an easy decision? No, it's a decision that we made collectively as a team, because I knew it was going to require an extraordinary amount of effort and energy, but we were all aligned that without values, we are nothing. And we were all signing up in that moment in agreement that is the assignment, is to replenish from a different place and to raise our gaze, because I'm not looking in the gutter anymore. I've worked too hard. I've worked too hard. I am not going back. Not today, Satan. Not today. I am not the one, as they say.
Satan, you ain't got no match on this one right here. You better sit your butt down. Oh my!
I am not the one today, right? But it takes bravery. I don't want to belittle how hard the decision was, because I worked with that client for many, many years, because I did not feel strong in that conviction. I did not feel I was operating from my own place of truth.
Yeah.
And so I was willing to take scraps from the table. And it's like, no, I am the table. I don't need your scraps.
Come on.
I don't. I do not need your scraps. I'm capable of creating. I can produce abundantly. I can align with others that have positive intention for themselves and for me, that will honor this relationship. Yes. I know that others see my value. I see my own value. You do not define my value. And it came violently. It came through a really bad experience, but it was a gift. And I think that is the other nugget is do not turn away from the challenges and the hardships, because there are gifts there that we are meant to receive. They will not be easily fought or, easily won, but they are essential in informing who we are and what our purpose is and what our mission is. So I look at those challenges sometimes as though they are nourishment, because they're here to feed me. And my job is to take a step back and analyze this painful experience that I'm going through. What am I here to learn?
Yeah.
And let me learn it now so I do not have to repeat it, because I do not want to repeat this lesson. I will receive it the first time. Please. By the grace of God, let me receive the lesson the first time. And I will not pray for patience ever.
Well, you truly live up to your name, the radical trailblazer, for sure. No questions asked on that. And I love that, what I take away from your story and what you've shared with me today is you are a true example of using the bricks that others have thrown at you to raise yourself higher.
Thank you for that.
You are so welcome. You are such an inspiration to me and so many others. And hopefully after the show, even more. I can't wait for your message to be shared. Thank you so much for being with me today
and for sharing this with me.
Absolutely.